Welcome, runners, to Synth Silk Failure, a podcast about watching marathon die. I am one of your co-hosts, Robomantis,
And I'm Monny. Hey, hey.
and we are doing a show again today. This is our fifth episode out of seven for this second season of Marathon the Game. It's our first season of the show, second season of Marathon the Game. I'm sure that's not going to get confusing for anyone. The format of the show is we're doing a little bit of an introduction here. Then Timani and I are actually going to go take a running break. We're going to go play some marathon, really get the blood going, get that joy for marathon really, alive in our hearts. And then we're going to come back and cover some of our main topics that we have for today. Timani, what are those topics we're going to be taking a look at?
Yeah, boy, has the synthetic blood been flowing lately when we've been on our runs. But yeah, for this episode, we will
Yeah.
be discussing, it's like kind of a real, tribute to Bungie today. We're going to be talking about the lore, especially not really like a deep dive into the story of Marathon, but more just talking about how the story is delivered in the game Marathon, and how that relates to Destiny and stuff like that. And then we're going to be talking about it's kind of an anniversary. I've actually got my anniversary mug here. This is from Halo 20th anniversary, and it is now Halo's 25th anniversary. And so they've released, Halo campaign Evolved. So the first time Halo is on like PlayStation, it's an Unreal Engine remake of the original Halo's campaign. I have played through it, not exhaustively. There's some new missions I haven't tried. I haven't done any co-op, which is obviously a big part of playing Halo. But I
Mhm.
have played through the campaign on Heroic, and I have some thoughts to share. We're going to talk about that and kind of like just what it means to remake a game these days.
Nice. All right, with that, runners, we are going to leave you and go planet side to Tau Ceti 4, and we will see you all after our running break. Welcome back, runners, from your running break. We hope you had a very productive time earning some money and completing some contracts for your various factions you've been working for. We had a great running break. T-Money, I feel like it's getting a little spicy out there
We had
right
some
now.
highs and lows. Like we had that one run where absolutely nothing happened, and we were just like, "Yeah, let's go." But then,
Right.
yeah, boy, I mean, it fits in with kind of our theme a little bit of the week running wise, which we'll get to later, which is dying a lot. But
Dying.
yeah, we got smoked by some purple shield guys. I will say, like, it's almost like validating to me when we get smoked by some purple shield guys, and like it's not really my fault, because it's
Right.
been my fault so often that I think I'm just kind of relieved when it's not. And then on the run we just had, we got to see like after you die, you can see the perspective of whoever is left on the map,
Right.
and we saw the duo that had just smoked us also run over some other crew with green shields. So,
Right. It switched to the perspective of a third party who was going in to attack the purple shields
it
who
seemed
crushed
like they
us.
were in
And
a great state of ambush. Like they had this high ground,
right.
and they were like sneaking around, and they were like picking their
I think
moment.
if they had, we took a good chunk. I think we broke the shields on both of those purples. I think
Yeah,
if
I got
that
one.
third party moved in slightly faster or had a slightly better angle where they could have gotten them sooner, they might have been able to finish the job. But I think, it was probably 20, 30 seconds before they were actually able to,
Well,
take the fight to them.
yeah,
And they had already fully healed up at that point in
right.
time.
And so by the time they chose their moment to do what we thought was ambushing the purple guys, one of the purple guys came up behind him, and it was just like it was a massacre. But that's
It was over.
one of the things I love about this game is that it just like pushes you to, I understand why. I think you're totally right that if they would have just pushed in immediately, like probably right when we had died, they would have had a great chance. But you're
Right.
scared to do that. You know what I mean? Like the game rewards you for pushing into terrifying situations,
Right.
and like for staying mobile and aggressive. You know what I mean? I mean, not all the time. You still have to kind of know what you're doing. But yeah,
Right. You got to choose that right moment. And, sometimes you can get an advantage by just like getting the drop on somebody. Like, usually that is like, if you're going to overcome somebody in terms of, an equipment advantage, usually it's because you get a slightly better
yeah,
drop on them, right? You've got good position. You catch them, with their guard down just the right moment. And that's usually when you can, flip the fight in your advantage.
yeah, exactly. I'm still trying to find the right balance because, lately I've been like, there's always this mental thing when you're like encountering somebody and you're like, okay, like, should I push through the fear
Right.
of them killing me and losing my stuff and try and like take the initiative or not? And I think I've like swung too far to like, yeah, take the initiative, like go kill them
Yeah.
without regard for the consequences.
Yeah, and I think overall this is a good segue into our general state of marathon session that we do every single episode. What we are seeing, I think, is not just that everybody has some gear that's a little more overpowered as we're getting close to the end of the season. I think we're also seeing the sort of overall player base kind of narrowing to the folks that are that much more sweaty and hardcore. um Looking at the user counts right now, when we first started the show before the running break, we were just under 3,000 players concurrent at on the marathon Steam charts. That bumped up by about 300, so as of checking right now we're at 3,300. um, so this is down by, I want to say like 25 to 30% from some of our previous episodes that we've done. Again, there's always going to be this attrition throughout the season of an extraction shooter, but this is just, I think, another sign that what we're seeing is the lobbies are just getting a little more like sweaty and hardcore, and the people who are still playing the game are the ones who are really really invested in playing it. And so we've gone from maybe being more like middle of the pack as casual players to maybe more of the bottom of the
Yeah,
ladder
I would
in
agree with
terms of
that.
like purple gear, gold gear, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it felt a little bit inevitable that that was going to happen too. And I would be surprised if you don't eventually see some kind of restriction, like the way on Cryo Archive you have to have over $5,000 worth of loadout. I think something like, hey, if you're going to go on perimeter, you have to have under $5,000 or under 7,000 worth of loadout.
Yeah.
To me, would be something that I think would be pretty helpful and just kind of alleviate they talked about part of the reason for vault breakers, right? Was like, we want people to kind of be able to take a little bit of a break from the sweatiness while still playing marathon.
Right.
And Vault Breaker, we've talked about it extensively, but it has only somewhat scratched that itch for me. And I think the idea of being able to know that, hey, I'm going to drop into perimeter and like maybe people are good, right? But nobody with like a gold shield is going to come in here and run me over. That would be
Yeah.
pretty nice.
Yeah. I think we hit maybe one or two gold shields on perimeter over the last couple of days, and it is just kind of like, damn, like I don't know that I can beat that, honestly, again, unless I just get like the perfect jump on you and a couple other things go wrong. Like it just feels kind of like insurmountable. I know they did like the sponsored kits as one of their limited things that they tried as well, where you're basically only going into a map on a sponsored kit. That I think could be, kind of similar to what you're talking about in terms of leveling the playing field, making this sort of, less sweaty version of a map. But the downside to that is that it's also a little less to get. You can't get as many of those like come up kits where you do like go from a gray shield to a blue shield, or a green, or even a green shield to a blue shield. And, all of a sudden, you've kind of upgraded your kit through the PvP element. It's more like the PvP is on an even playing field, and then any upgrades are just things that you find on the map. Um, in terms of weekly updates to Marathon, not a ton. I will say, our last episode was all about Vault Breakers, and I repeatedly said that like Vault Breakers is ending on Tuesday. Little did I know they had made an announcement, I think like the day before, that Vault Breakers was extended. So Vault Breakers is actually, in theory, unless something unless something different has happened,
They did
is
recently
ending
confirm
this.
on the dev channel, yes, that it will be ending this Tuesday with the reset.
Okay. Tuesday the 18th, it is ending. So, yeah, interesting to see. I think it was a good experiment. Go back and listen to our episode from a couple of weeks ago to get the bulk of our thoughts on that. But any thoughts on Vault Breakers as it comes to an end, T-Money?
I've been playing it a little bit more solo. We haven't played it too much more as a group. Stubby Stan, by the way, has been
Right.
a little bit out of town, unavailable for playing, so we've kind of been playing more duos-oriented stuff.
Duos.
And I was a little weirded out that I wasn't sure how to feel when they extended the time limit for solo Vault Breakers. Like, it just kind of seemed like they were doing almost anything they could to make it easier, short of like reducing the amount of enemies or something like that. So I don't know. It was clear that it was experimental. I think it's fine for them to tweak it. I think it's also nice for it to come to an end. And I'm just really excited for, to see kind of what they do with it and what form, if any, it takes in season 3. But I've kind of fallen off a little. I had another like really nice run solo where I made it all the way to a vault, loaded up on data, and then like died crawling to the exfil like 50 feet away again. And I was like, okay, this was funny for a while, but I think I'm done with this mode for a little bit now.
Yeah. Yeah, they have said that they're launching some sort of official PvE mode as part of season 3. I don't know if that's going to be ready at launch or if that's maybe a mid-season update, or maybe there's one more experiment that they do before the official version. But yeah, we will do a season 3 preview at some point in time in our remaining 2 episodes that we have for season 2, going into that as they give us more updates. In general, we like to have a session for like special news or things like that. There's been a lot of it as we've been doing the show, in terms of, Destiny being canceled and, massive layoffs at Bungie, and the director of the game leaving the show and things like that. As of right now, there hasn't been, I would say, the last couple weeks, it's been quiet in a way where, I can't really think of anything that would be relevant in terms of like the actual news. But I will say, just from like a vibes-based perspective, like the quietness almost feels worse than the big controversial stuff, like it almost feels like, we've had these big eventful things and it's chaotic, but maybe there's opportunities, and these couple weeks, it has sort of felt to me a little bit as a marathon player, like, yeah, just like the state of the game, the health of the game is maybe just like not good. The game is still incredibly fun to play. I've played it more the last couple weeks than I've probably had played for most of the season, but in general, like it almost feels like it's quiet, but it's just too quiet. I don't know, T-Money, what your thoughts are in terms of like discourse around the game or news around the game. If you
Yeah,
have any
totally.
things to
Well,
bring up.
I'm about to break that quiet and break some news right here, which is, a human interest story about the effects on real people's lives of the layoffs at Bungie. This week,
Okay.
both of us rolled over to level 100 for the first time in Marathon, collected our Notorious title. Well, I kind of like refused to collect my Notorious title for like 2 days because I was like,
You didn't want the notoriety.
do I want to be Notorious? But then you were like, there's a shirt. And so I checked it out on Bungie Rewards. It was like, you haven't unlocked it. So I went, equipped the Notorious title in Marathon. Still can't get my shirt. I emailed them. I was like, here's my, my Bungie tag. Here's all the information. Like, I did the thing. And they were like, thanks for reaching out. If you could provide your Bungie tag and like all the information of the thing and like a screenshot. And, so I'm just here to say that, like, it's not just abstract, it's not just abstract developers off somewhere losing their job. It's the real podcast hosts not being able to buy their commemorative t-shirt. As I'm sitting here in my Destiny, I don't even know, something, there's an eyeball in the middle. I think it's like Osiris related. I really couldn't keep
The
track
Eye
of
of
that kind
Triumph.
lore. Yeah.
Ascendant Monument.
But it is, I really agree with you about like the silence feeling really weird. I was thinking about how fun it felt to get these, like, because we got a good handful of Destiny shirts over the years. They would be associated with like moments of triumph a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it was really fun, and it wasn't a regular thing by any means, but more than once I was kind of stopped by somebody or commented on by somebody in public.
Dude.
Like, when I was wearing a Destiny shirt, and it was really
Yeah,
cool.
they'd be like, are you a hunter main? Are you are you a warlock?
Right, right.
Some guy was like, oh yeah, my girlfriend plays hunter. And I was like, okay, like, all right, cool, bro.
Yeah, and it was like really cool to feel like, oh, you're getting this shirt and you're kind of like exposing yourself to this, like, like the community of the game was like bleeding over into real life in a way that was like really cool. And with this, it's like, given the player count, right? Like the likelihood of me bumping in to somebody who's among these 4,000 people, and like even among those 4,000, like who is gonna recognize the shirt that says right? Like
right.
It's a little bit like, it turns something from, like I said, something to get really excited about and feel like you're being a part of this community into something that's like, I don't want to say I'm like embarrassed of it or anything like that, but it does turn it into this like way more niche, like, specialized thing that I am like kind of just doing for me and for like the love of the game, and because I think it's a cool shirt, which I do, and I really want it. And I will secure it soon. But
we've gone on this road of like trying to make a podcast about this game. I think we're in some ways a lot more bought in than, some people. But yeah, I mean, when you compare it to Destiny, I think like the contrast is pretty stark, right? Like there was like Guardian Con, like they were having like conventions where like people would go like just to be like Destiny fans. And these weren't like huge, like this wasn't like Comic-Con or Gen Con or something like that, but they were like real conventions where the community would get together and stuff like that. And certainly just the player base, the amount of people playing, it's just like nowhere near the scale of that where something like this could be feasible. I mean, maybe we need to do it. Maybe we need to do it.
Yeah, we should
SilkCon.
SilkCon. And like the whole thing can be that, like, there's shops, there's vendors, like you could do normal PvE stuff, but then like it's also, you could just like rob other attendees. Like you could just pickpocket them, and it's like, shit, like don't show up to SilkCon unless with anything you're not ready to lose.
You got to be prepared to lose it all. Yeah. I agree. And I think also, it can only last for 25 minutes and then we have to shut everything down. Then the entire Silk degrades, and so it's just a 25-minute conference. Yeah, very, very packed.
It actually would be pretty sweet if there was some sort of like like a digital card game or something, you know what I mean, like a side game associated with like Marathon or another extraction shooter, and then you could actually do like they could do like some kind of limited edition drop associated with this is a total alternate universe where like this game is incredibly popular and includes some kind of mobile side game with like collectibles, but that's a fun idea.
I do hope I do think that's a fun idea, and I really hope, that there is something. I think Paul Tassi talks about this a lot, of just like, these IPs are still strong and valuable, even if the, games as live services might not, have much life left in them. I do hope we see some stuff like that. Like this iteration of the game is so cool. The world is so cool. As we're going to talk about, the lore, if you can find it, of this game is pretty cool. So I do hope that there's some sort of life beyond, Marathon, this game, that can be something like that. And yeah, like a card game would be awesome.
Yeah, I do
Be
too, but
really
it also
cool.
has to be like the right kind of thing, right? To me, there's always such a fine line, and I'll kind of touch on this with the Halo thing later, but like between like
Mhm.
keeping the property that you love alive, right? And like reanimating it in fun ways versus just like kind of wringing more cash out of something that like
Yeah.
is kind of better left alone. And so it really to me depends on like who's driving the project a lot of times, whether it's like driven from the creative side or like from the financial side. And like I don't have a ton of faith that we're living in a world where they're like, yeah, sure, Bungie, do this thing that's like driven by the creative side and like take this risk. You know what I'm saying? Like put more
Yeah.
into the marathon IP.
I think the one thing that I could see, and again, this is, I think, true of just like entertainment in general, is like I would love to see some things that are smaller budget, lower risk, lower investment, but also are not shackled with the insane expectations of needing to make $750 million a year in order to justify the gap between what Sony paid for Bungie
Yeah.
and the reality of their, the
This is
profitability. I
totally. I miss like the
you know
Xbox Live Arcade, like all those little indie titles and stuff like that that were like, okay, I might only play this for a couple hours, but I paid 250 for it. So,
Right. And like it made, a very small, it made a couple $1 million, and that's a tremendous success for what the project was.
yeah.
That kind of stuff.
I think some of that stuff is still alive and well on Steam, but yeah, anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked by that.
Yeah. Good runs of the week, as we've talked about. We've just been fucking dying. I mean, I know like a normal, healthy exfil rate is less than 50%. I think we're like maybe at 10%,
Yeah,
where
this
we're like
week
actually,
I think we
and
had one
most of
night
that
where we
time
just didn't exfil successfully at all, maybe like
we had
six or
a,
seven runs.
right. I think we had one in the very beginning, and I think that was because we just like basically sprinted away from
Yeah,
another team and ran to an
yeah,
exfil, which was really, really good. They were kind of disappointed that we just exfilled instead of fighting them. Like they
yeah.
came
This was the
chasing
night
after us, and
marsh
they were
guys,
like,
right? Or at least it was. I don't.
it
Maybe
was
it was day, but
marsh, day or night marsh. But yeah, we were in bio research.
yeah,
You spotted them, and again, I think we're on blue shields, maybe even green shields. It's purple shields, right? I think I'm playing recon. I throw my drone in. They start coming down the building. You tried to talk to them, right?
I don't remember honestly. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been talking a lot. They came in. I throw my tracker drone. It hits one of them. I see like, oh, purple shields are cracked. And we're both just like, we got to get out of here. We run there's an exfil over at Complex. We just like book it over there, activate the exfil, get ready to go. As we are getting like in the exfil, like basically ready to go, we hear them approach, and one of the guys just goes, "Why'd you guys do that?" I don't know what that was. Like if we were not supposed to run away and just let them kill
He
us.
sounded so like genuinely disappointed. He's like, "Why'd you do that?" But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think dying so often has kind of like encouraged me to and like sort of realizing when we're overmatched, combined with like
Yeah.
what I mentioned earlier, which is like my total inability to like disengage from people, has caused
Yeah.
me to like resort to getting on the mic a little more often. And it's
Hmm.
something that I really did a lot at the beginning of this game. And it was like a huge part of the fun of season one for me as everybody was still figuring things out and people were so scared that a lot of times
Yeah.
you getting on the mic and being like, hey, do you want to exfil together? Do you want to not fight? Was like a lifeline for people. And now like people,
Right.
including myself, has settled in to where like, Stubby Stan mentioned this before, like you feel like you have the tools for most engagements in this game. Like you might need to change the distance. Like there are certain times when you're just not equipped
Mhm.
for a certain engagement, but like, I just feel more comfortable. Like I feel like I can give myself a fighting chance most of the time now. And so I was getting into like a lot more engagements where I just didn't feel the need to use the microphone at all. And now, like that you said, things have gotten more spicy. We're dying all the time. I'm just like, hey, might as well try it out, right? There's been several situations where like I die and then like I'm watching you, and because I like feel helpless and I'm like, ooh, like I'm gonna get him killed. Like I'll be like, you should negotiate with them. Like you should just say this or whatever. And so I try to like kind of put my money where my mouth is and do that myself when like I'm the one alone.
Yeah.
And so anyway, all this has just resulted in like some fun encounters getting back on the mic. There was that guy who was disappointed that we exfilled. And I still have no idea, like, did they want to come with us? Like what was going on there? Was he kind of just like taunting us because they wanted to kill us? You had the guy like last night who you were like running around in smoke, and you were the only, I was
Oh yeah.
I was down already, and you were, I don't remember what you were trying to accomplish really.
I mean nothing.
Survive.
So they were I think again this was like a purple and a gold shield, and again maximum we were on blue shields, and I was playing assassin. You were already down. I'm like way overmatched, and all I could do was just be like, all right, I'm gonna throw my smoke down, and I'm gonna go in with the best close range weapon I
Oh
have,
right, yeah,
which
yeah, yeah.
at the moment is the knife. Knife. We've been getting knifed a lot recently, especially by rooks. There's been a
Man,
lot of rooks popping into duos, and some of them are just deadly with
the
those
knife is
knives.
back.
Yeah, knife is back. So I was like, this is what I'm going to try to do. And yeah, the guy's just like, hey, bro, like, where are you?
Where are you? He sounded so
Where are
earnest,
you?
like he was like expecting you to. I mean, he did kill you like a split second later, but.
Yeah.
And then there was the one where I think it was like gray shield guys, and we dispatched one of them pretty easily. But I was like, pointing my gun at him on the ground, and I started being like, "Give us all your gold," which is like the currency from like the Tales games. And he
Yeah.
like didn't say anything. And I like said it a couple more times, and then we like killed his buddy. And I was like, as you were finishing his buddy, I was like, none of
Yeah.
this had to happen if you would have just given us your gold. And he was like, as I was finishing, he's like, we don't have any gold. And I felt bad because I was like, I didn't say gold, you dumbass. And I was like, he was at least trying, at least he responded. Like, there's only 4,000,
Yeah.
3,000 of us. I should encourage people to get on the mic whenever possible, but
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
fun to like make something out of even the runs. Like I've had a surprising amount of fun. Like I'm a little worried about my vault dwindling and stuff like that, but overall I've had like a really fun experience even on the runs where we die. And sometimes that's just a result of being able to get on the mic and like be a little bit silly as we're like getting murdered.
Yeah, I think that's something that I didn't really experience a lot in season one was this feeling of like, yeah, my like ability to buy in to like good runs is dwindling really quickly. Like I look at however long we have left in the season. I mean, it's like another month, I think, right? It's like mid to late September is when the season's supposed to end.
I don't
And
even know.
like
Yeah.
it's definitely September, so maybe it's only like 3 weeks. But that's something where I'm starting to be like, yeah, like they need to do something just like so that I can keep playing because like I only have a handful of shields left.
Yeah.
Like I have a decent amount of guns, but like the ability to be able to put together a kit that is gonna really like sustain me for the rest of the season. I don't have a ton of confidence in that. So I think that's gonna, absolutely be something that I'm going to keep track of for the rest of the season. And like at the end of season one, they started doing things where like sponsored kits were way better and like offering more free stuff. So like they might already have strategies in place to kind of balance that and level the playing field a little bit more. But that is definitely a concern on my end in terms of like, yeah, it just feels like if you're not running in with a like blue shield at minimum, you're not,
Yeah, I would agree.
you're
It
not going
does
to be
feel that
viable.
way. And that's like a pretty new feeling for me. The other thing on the
Right.
opposite end of the spectrum is like I got, when we hit level 100, I got this package with like a silenced gold sniper rifle and a gold backpack
Hmm.
and gold shields. And
Yeah.
like I brought the sniper rifle in once and it was like a
Yeah.
whole big thing. But like I still, you know what I mean, the backpack and the shield are kind of sitting there and I'm like a little I'm pretty reluctant to use those. You know what I mean? Partially just going back to like
Right.
the firing range issue that we mentioned before of like I don't exactly know how this stuff works, but like it's also just like
Hmm.
the gap between that and everything else in my vault is so large. It's kind of like I'm not going to take it into cryo, most likely. My chance of
Right.
exfilling there is really low. And then when I take it in anywhere else, I'm so kind of like just self aware of like, I think you perform best in this game when you're not too worried about losing any individual piece of gear. And
Yeah.
that's not the case when I'm rolling with something that's worth like 4x more than anything else in my vault.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because like I think the solution that's kind of built into this game is like, is that sort of like, come up where like you go in, you have some decent stuff, and then you're able to like get a better weapon, get a better shield off of somebody. And like, I guess in theory, that would be true for us for purples, right? Maybe we bring in some more of our purple weapons. We can take out some people with purple shields and go from a green shield to a purple shield or a blue shield to a purple shield. And then in theory, we might be able to build up that floor between purple and gold, but it doesn't really feel that way to me right now. Like I still get green shields a lot of the times from like completing new cal contracts, and like I'm VIP with them, like you can only buy so many blue shields from them in the armory per like refresh.
Right. Well,
And
this
so
is
it does kind of feel, we talk a lot about like raising the floor over the course of the season, and it does sort of feel like there's a gap right now. Like the floor is at maybe at blue shields.
yeah.
There's nothing to get your floor to purple or gold, and if there is, we're not doing it.
Well, and you just hit
We're not
VIP
participating in that.
with every faction as well.
Right.
I'm not quite
Right.
there yet. And like so that's what I was going to say is like you're going to have to rely on your sponsorships and stuff like that, but you're right. I mean, I think those are getting you to blues at most, right? So,
Mhm. If you're lucky, like I think there's an RNG component where it's like now they can drop blues. Maybe there's an even smaller chance that they're going to drop purples, but like
yeah, and then
I
I
don't
think
know.
maybe
It's
one option and this doesn't get you to purples is like to go do like really low stakes like farming runs of just trying to get valuables and credits and then using that to buy like the sponsored kits, like the ones that are 4,000 or 12,000 or
right,
whatever credits can be decent, but
right.
that's back to becoming kind of a grind, which is exactly what we
Mhm.
talked about, like not wanting this game to become. And it's weird because it is also hard to like grinding is sort of what we've been doing. Like all week we were dying, but we both
Right.
rolled over to level 100 because we were getting contracts done by just like deploying and dying and deploying. And that's not really what we were trying to do, but like that's pretty grindy behavior. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah,
really
I don't
interesting to
know.
see how it evolves with like towards the end of this season because I think they thought they were a little too rich with loot, right? But then they kind of scaled it back, and even
Right.
even like the way they distribute loot within the runs within this season has gone up and
Mhm.
down, right? So like
Yeah.
I think they're clearly looking at this. Like I don't think this is just like us saying this. Like, I think this is directly related to like the health of the game and the ability to sustain,
Right.
to like get new players to play more than a few runs.
Right. And people, I mean, I think I even said this, like, we talked about this in like episode 2 or something of our show, where like there was this discourse around season 2 where it was like, yeah, there was this thing where all the really hardcore players could farm all of this loot really, really quickly by doing the sponsored
Yeah,
Night
and we were
March
like,
thing.
nah.
We were like, it's not bothering us right now. And either because like the players have dropped off and now it's just, way more hardcore, or people have just been saving their really good gear until getting closer to the white. I think now we are starting to feel that, whereas we weren't feeling that a month and a half ago, something like that.
Oh,
But
totally. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Remember a month ago when I was like, I don't want to go into the pinwheel at all. I have no motivation to do that. Over the past
yeah.
week, I was the one being like, yeah, let's get up there for exactly the reasons that
Mhm.
you were just describing. So
Yeah, I'll be curious. I do think that is our one sort of mechanism to kind of start building stuff up, is to try to do like, lockdown events, try to get into the pinwheel, try to do some of these other things that are a little more high risk on certain maps in terms of like, you know, it really draws attention to yourself, or you got to fight a higher level boss like a warden or something like that. That might be something to that we want to take a look at to try to improve ourselves, because yeah, if we're just keeping on the same path, I think it's just going to be like a battle of attrition for sure.
yep, definitely. I agree. Well, I know you are going to take us into some thoughts about the marathon lore and how that is all delivered and everything. So why don't we get into the main focus of our episode today and talk about that?
Yeah. So lore in marathon, or lore, I would say, in Bungie games has always been really, really interesting. Obviously, going back to like Halo, going back to even before that, in marathon or something like that, there wasn't a ton of like external lore. You kind of had the story and that was available in just playing through the campaign, and then there might be some external things like books or some other resources that give you more information of the world. But the world itself was kind of self-contained. You kind of got everything you needed just from playing through the story of the game. I would say with Destiny and with Marathon, there's been this sort of more separation between the gameplay itself and the lore and the story. Obviously, part of this is just because these are big life service games where people play over and over again. You're not playing the same story beats over and over again. It's really more focused on the gameplay experience and maybe the stories that are created through like a PvP VE situation like you have in Marathon. So what they've moved to, and like Destiny was criticized for this from the very beginning, like I want to say like even from like the alpha, like people were like criticizing the story and the ways that you actually got story delivered. But essentially, you're getting your lore not necessarily from the story, but from different components. So I've broken it out into a few different categories here. The first one is environmental. This is probably what people are engaging with the most. And it's really, really cool. It's really, really vibes based. And it's something that I think makes the maps really, really replayable. Like as you're going through like dormitories and outposts, you might walk into a room and be like, oh, yeah, like this is like the room where there were like a bunch of kids who lived here. You know what I mean? Or like, this is where they're growing plants for, in algae ponds, right? Like, this is like a food source. This was like an actual agricultural space. A lot of these buildings have bathrooms in them. Like, there is a lot that was put in place in the design of the games to give you a sense of like, yeah, what were the colonists like, lives like in Tau Ceti 4, I think that stuff is really strong. It's really cool. It's one of the reasons why I think the level design is like so incredible and so replayable is that not only did they do such a great job of giving you, corners to hide in and flanking spots and alleyways for snipers and things like that, but they also do a really good job of just like putting little signs somewhere, little bits of graffiti, somebody's jacket hanging up on a wall or a hazmat suit station or something like that. That really does just like sometimes you don't even realize it because you're in the middle of combat, fighting a bunch of bots, fighting a bunch of players. But then you go back, a couple rounds later, and you're in that same spot in a quiet moment, and you can kind of just look around and be like, dang, like what happened here, what were these people's lives like here. So I think that's like one of the first kind of mechanisms they have for delivering the lore, and in my mind I would say it's probably the strongest. Timani, any thoughts on kind of like environmental storytelling or
Yeah,
what they've done with the level design?
100%. So I think this is like really, to me, this is like the headline of the whole game, right? Like this is what got all the attention when they first released it in that alpha. This is like
Mhm.
directly related to the whole art controversy that they had and stuff like that. And they're like, it's not just that you can picture what these people's lives are like. It's that everything has this hyper future, hyper plastic sheen to it. Like it feels like foreign and alien, but it also feels like totally plausible for what humans would, right? Like kind of like evolve into and become and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I remember the first time I booted up the game, there's like, when you get to the title screen before you can like, where it's like press A or whatever to get into the menus, there's just like this kind of rapid fire video montage of like a lot of like first person views of like kind of like runners like readying their weapons, but then also like drones flying around the marathon ship and like weird like telemetry data streaming kind of stuff. And I was just like immediately like, oh shit, this is awesome. Like I'm so into this, and like throughout the opening cutscenes, and then like the first time I was like dropped on the worlds and just like looking around and like exploring the buildings and stuff, like yeah, I would just agree. This is like a huge strength of the game. This is like what pulled me into the game, like being really skeptical about an extraction shooter, right? And not being really like excited
Mhm.
to play that genre of game. Like this is what pulled me in, like the environment. And from that first like tutorial with Oni just being like, oh, like robots are coming to kill you. Like, don't worry. Like, go down in this vent. I was like, yeah, like I'm in this. Like this is really
Yeah.
cool. Like I want to see more of what this world has to offer. And I was pretty excited about that world for like a while going forward. Through season one.
Yeah. And there's still stuff like, yeah, to your point about like, what was it like for like humans to colonize this stuff? Like, there's so many of these structures kind of look like temporary. Like they look like, temporary housing that like FEMA might put up in like a disaster area where there's like a lot of like tents
Space
and
FEMA.
tarps. Yeah, space FEMA, UES FEMA.
Spema.
But there's also things like little like parts of the door, like where the window is, where like there's a little instruction that says like attach here or something like that, or there's like little like lines and cutouts like it's like IKEA furniture. And
Yeah.
you get this idea of like, yeah, like what these people had to do was like take a bunch of like lumber or like maybe like 3D printed materials that they made
Polymers.
and like yeah, a bunch of
Biopolymers.
polymers, silk, weave, biomass, and like, make this sort of like prefabricated building just to like have a place to live and then do their research, then do, their things like that. And it really is like I still find myself, yeah, I agree. Like that was like part of the initial draw, but there's still times where like we'll be in like a map and I'm just kind of like, dang, this is so cool. Like this is really, really neat what they've done. The other component of that too, so like you see the society they set up, but then there's also just this like very eerie part of the story as well, which is like, well, everything went wrong. That's sort of the big, if there's a like an overarching theme in Marathon, it's this idea of like a society where something horrible went wrong and now like everything's empty. Everything's empty except for just these like military patrol bots. And it just creates like this really like eerie, kind of sad vibe. And it's just like really, really cool. I guess the other thing that you could say is like, the comments that Oni makes might be part of this environmental storytelling as well, where again, you're not really getting a ton of story details, but there are things where, it'll just be like, here's a reminder from Cyber Acme, here's a philosophy, here's like, we've run a diagnostic on your runner shell and you're experiencing a nominal amount of memory loss or something like that, but it's within reason. Your synapses are not working 100%. That kind of gives you the sense of like, okay, what is the actual process like of having a runner go into the space? And yeah, again, just to reiterate, like I think all of that stuff is really, really strong. It makes the vibes of the game so good. And it doesn't give you a lot, but it gives you enough to keep coming back, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like the whole like it's 3D printed, but not everything works perfectly vibe. Like it seems like
Yeah.
humanity showed up pretty well prepared for all of this, and stuff just didn't
Yeah.
work the way that it was supposed to. And I think that's part of the eerie vibe. Like one of the things for me that's striking is like seeing the evidence that humanity was failing to grow enough food to feed itself. That really gives me like the shivers in a weird way, right? Like, and some of this is buried in the codex, so we'll get to that in a second. But like, just the fact that they're resorting to like these algae ponds, that even those are like not very successful, and like you can find these various codex entries and like see evidence that they've tried to grow food to become self-sustaining, and instead like the busiest part of their built environment seems to be the quarantine zone where like everybody got sick and eventually died, I guess. So
Dude, yeah, and that stuff is so cool. Yeah. I mean, I think between like the food insecurity, the plague, like there are some I think like really cool, really like important themes going on in this game that are just again sort of buried in the lore in a way that might not be super accessible. But like yeah, some of that stuff is yeah, I think absolutely chilling that you're talking about. So the other way where you sort of get story in this game is through your priority contracts. So each faction sort of has a storyline, and I would say if we're looking at like a more conventional, story with like a plot, this is the only area where that is really happening at all. So there's a couple, mechanisms for this. The first one is you take a contract and you usually get a little speech from your handler at the faction. Whoever it is, they're going to talk to you a little bit and you get a little bit of the story. Why are they asking you to do this? New Caloric is really interested in understanding why this like contagion happened. So they have you go, and when you're on your mission, at least in theory, what you're doing is helping them with their research, right? So you go, you scan a bunch of crates, or you scan, a bunch of little growths in the river, or you go find, a iconic part of the map and you scan that. You
smash some
steal
glass.
yeah, you steal a contagion and you bring it back to something, and that in and of itself is like a story element. Then you come back, you turn in your contract, and you get another little story beat. Each one of these primary quests has, or priority contracts has a like step, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, whatever. And you usually get a little story beat after each one of those. It's not every single one, but most of the time you get a little story beat. That, completing each one of those for each faction in the game is sort of like the story or the, campaign of the game, if you want to call it. A lot of these are really fun. Some of them are really annoying, like doing the leaf quest or something like that. There's some that I feel like I'm just never going to get to, which is kind of frustrating. Um, and then there's some that, yeah, are just like really easy, like almost kind of feel like waste of time, but they move the story along. As far as I'm aware, these haven't changed between season one and season two, so you're basically going through that same story, quote unquote storyline for each season. I don't have a huge problem with that necessarily, especially since, as we'll get into, like it's kind of hard to keep track of the lore in this game in a real way. It's kind of nice to have reinforcements. And they usually offer some good rewards and stuff like that. But there are also some challenges with that. Something that, like, we experienced with Stubby Stan, for example, was, we've already completed most of our priority contracts, but when he was just getting started, everything you're doing is basically a priority contract. It's also how they kind of orient you to the game. And so, like, we'd be like, okay, we go, we do a mission, we get his contract done, and then we all just kind of wait for like a couple minutes because, like, he's got to, have this story from, he's got to speak to Gantry from Maida or, something like that. And like, it's not really like a very fluid way of the story being integrated with the gameplay. It kind of just like stops everything for a little bit.
So, like, I I kind of alluded to this in a previous episode. I just this is like something that really ticks me off about modern gaming, right? Is the inability for games to figure out how to handle multiplayer with cutscenes, with delivering story content. And like, I think in some ways this is like not the worst, because at least you and I, in the example you just said, can sit there and mess with our like vaults and pick our own contracts and stuff like that. In a game like Halo, you are sitting there and you all have to watch the same cutscene. And if somebody, like in most cases, if somebody decides to like start talking, nobody else can really hear. If somebody decides to skip the cutscene, it skips it for everybody. Different games handle this differently, but like famously, we got the final cutscene of Halo 3 skipped on us by somebody we were playing multiplayer with. Won't mention who that person was. But, you know, and then into a game like Destiny, where the cutscenes were kind of like scattered about a little more weirdly in that game. But there was the same kind of like waiting for people to do stuff while, you know, and you're just kind of like, okay, I guess I'll sit here in space and watch my little ship sit here and fly around. And like, I used to complain about like needing at least some kind of mini game. Like, let me play Space Invaders with my little little ship, you know, while I'm waiting for people to do stuff. But yeah, it's really, and like Stubby Stan feels bad, but I don't want him to like skip the, like you said, that is basically the campaign. I think that's really good, exactly the right way to think of it, of this game. So I don't want to be like, oh man, just skip all that, you know. I think you can you watch those later if you want to?
Dude, it's so confusing. So
I think there's a way to.
In the codex, you can, so in addition to getting your little videos that you watch, you can also, it also usually unlocks a codex entry. Those codex entries have audio logs, which I'll get to in a second here. That's sort of our last main type of going through things. So you have your audio logs that also get unlocked per completing steps in the contract. I don't actually know, though, that you can go back and rewatch all of your conversations with the, with your handlers at the factions or not. It might be possible. If it is, like, it is very, very hard to find. I tried to look for it this morning. I couldn't find it. So I can't say a clear no, but like, as far as I can tell, it's probably a no on that, which is just another really weird thing. Like, how can we not just be able to revisit that stuff
Yeah, I just don't get it.
whenever we
It's
want?
incompatible with the way like games work. Like Marathon is already kind of asking you a lot by like, having these runs that you can't drop out of. But at least they're like very time limited and you know
Right.
what you're getting into and stuff like that. I hate when games are just like, here's your one shot to sit here and watch this thing. And Marathon does let you
Hmm.
advance the dialogue, so at least it's not an actual video that you like, have one chance to play.
Right.
You can kind of step away during these and then come back. Um, so I guess it could be worse, but I just hate anything where there's like one chance to experience the story beat and then it's gone, right? Even
Well, and it
like in
just
Halo, you
feels
can just
like
replay that mission and see the cutscenes over and over again.
right. And like, it's I mean, they've been doing like cutscene theaters, since like what, Metal Gear Solid 2? Like you've been able to go
Yeah.
back and revisit stuff like story elements from a game like pretty often. So again, I mean, it might be possible. I don't want to like, throw Bungie under the bus here. Maybe there is a way to do it, but as we'll talk about in just another second, like the way it's organized is just like it's so hard to actually get into any of the information. So the last way that they sort of deliver lore to you is by exfilling with collectibles. So there's these various valuables that exist on every single map. They're all unique to each map, and you can exfil with them to not only get some money. When you exfil, they're usually worth at least a couple thousand credits. But you also unlock a codex entry each time you exfil with them. And there's sort of a progress tracker on each little codex entry. And, you need to exfil 10 to unlock everything in the codex, or you need to unlock, whatever. It's different for each one. And these have really, really cool story bits as well. There's a lot of stuff about, again, the contagion, people's personal experiences. As you mentioned, with things like tick milk, cheeseburgers, there's a ton of stuff on the food production in Marathon. There's stuff like explaining the lore of the cats, and some really good stuff about like how the UESC like handles like death and grieving and therapy. Like these story elements are really, really cool. Some of them are broken up just in like text logs that you can kind of read through. Some of them though are like voice acted audio logs, and they might be 1 to 2 minutes long, and they're again really, really well done, really interesting. All the voice actors they got are really good. The environmental, sound design and stuff like that, like they're kind of these cool short little like radio plays or something like that that you hear that give you a ton of information on the world. The issue is, again, going back to the organization and what you're talking about in terms of like the one time ability to listen to things. So these do unlock a codex entry. They unlock, like a series of them. The codex is always there, but you really like, when you exfil with something, you'll go in, you'll, see your codex entry, you open it up just to like see what it is, and it marks it as read, or it marks it as played if it's an audio log. And like then it's gone in terms of like your organization. Like you don't have a way of like marking it as like save for later or do anything like that. So like you can either take the approach of just like never looking in your codex, but sometimes like your codex has a bunch of things that are like rewards, profile emblems, cosmetics, things like that that you actually want to go in and unlock just to like influence the game. Or, you just have to go back and like try to find it, because they make the collectibles specific to the amount of times you exfil with a certain collectible. You might be getting these story bits a little bit of of the time over the course of an entire season. Like you might exfil with a shrink wrapped bonsai your first week, and then you might not find another one until, the final week of the season. And so you're getting this story spread out over months and months, and it just makes it really, really hard. You have to go in, you have to find the collectibles that you want. I mean, really, I think the best way to approach it would be once you've completed a collectibles, codex entry, go in and re-listen to everything, like finally engage with it. But it's just like that doesn't feel like fun. It doesn't feel like you're like being encouraged to like, actually engage with all of this really cool stuff they've designed for the world. It just kind of feels like they built all this really cool stuff and it's up to you to figure out like how to actually like find it.
Yeah, I've always had a lot of questions about like how the writers at Bungie feel about the way that their story gets delivered. Because, okay, Destiny, the whole thing with Destiny, right, was I think it was designed to be a little more linear and deliver a lot more of the story through cutscenes. But then there was this big Kotaku piece about like a year before the game came out, they redesigned everything. That's why a lot of the story got shunted into these like lore entries. And so what you got was this game with like cutscenes, yeah, but like a lot of the lore, like anything that wasn't directly related to the actions you were taking, was just like described on these grimoire cards, right? And it was super weird when the game came out. But then Destiny got really popular, everyone got super used to it. They took basically the same approach with Destiny 2. Everyone just got super, like, everyone just accepted that, like, if you want to know what's going on in Destiny, this game that you paid for and play, although I guess it was free to play after a while, like, you go on YouTube and you look up these videos by this guy named Bife or whatever, because, like, you can't figure out what's going on in the game unless you have like tons of time and attention span to like piece it together yourself, right?
Right. Like somebody took on the mantle to be like, this stuff is really cool. I'm going to be the one to explain it because there's all these people who enjoy this game. They appreciate the lore, but it is so hard to actually like, comprehend it that there needs to be a person like fully designed, like fully designated to be like the lore storyteller.
Right.
And like that's really cool. That's an amazing part of the community, but it's
Right.
also like I don't know, it kind of sucks just as like a regular person who's playing the game who wants to know what the experience is.
Yeah, exactly. So like my journey with Marathon was like starting off, I was like pretty in sync with you in season 1 as we started to unlock a lot of these cool collectibles and stuff, right? And as we worked our way through the factions. And so it would be like, oh, like, hang on, I need to talk to Gantry. And it's like, yeah, me too, right? So there was kind of no problem.
Right.
And the stuff that you mentioned as far as the map specific collectibles, like the bonsai trees and like the log entries from people and stuff like that, like season 1, I remember we were just constantly bantering about like, this is amazing, like this story is so cool, this universe is so fleshed out, like I'm so excited to keep uncovering little pieces of it. And I didn't get this, like I wasn't frustrated at that point. Like I thought this was a cool way to deliver the story, and I thought they had actually like kind of like refined that grimoire technique in a cool way. Fast forward to season 2, and especially playing with Stubby Stan, when all that just collided with the realities of like our different levels basically, and it's just like we're ready to go.
Right.
Like we're like pick a new contract, re-equip a couple shield charges, and then we're playing with somebody who it's like, oh, hold on, I need to talk to Gantry, and then I need to go into my codex because I unlock 6 things. And like you said, like 2 of them are just for using pieces of equipment, but like 3 of them are actually really important, like additional lore entries based on something I exfilled or whatever, right? And there's no way for him to know how to like organize that, or for us to like be able to tell him what's important to him, because it is all story stuff,
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's been a real, like, something I've, like, turned on between season 1 and season 2. And I just think, like, yeah, at the very least, you need some way of, I think your idea of just waiting until you unlock all the collectibles and then engaging with them is a smart way to think about it. But they need some way to, like, I would love the ability to, like, mark this as I would like to read later, save for later kind of thing. And then in the times when
Yeah.
I am like, oh, okay, like, hey, Robomantis is online. He's got 6 minutes left on perimeter. Let me take a couple minutes to go through some of that read later stuff and like soak in some lore.
Yeah, or I'd love like, maybe there's like a little like player that you could do like when you're loading into a map, like you could like put some of the lore on the screen, or like I was talking about like they should do like classic like Halo style like a Zanzibar zinger, like there should be, if you could unlock codex entries that then as you're loading into the map it's like, something pops up like, oh yeah, Dr. Song was experimenting this kind of thing, and it's like whatever, it's unsanctioned hostilities 1 out of 5 or something like that, and just give you a little bit of that story just like passively, or just like it's here when you want it, not like it's here when you have to go search for it and go find it. And yeah, I mean, I think Bungie must have been assuming that they could, continue to rely on the community to provide the lore. And like, I do know Bife was still doing some of that at the start of Marathon. There's like somebody else I saw, like NEPH, that's been doing some Marathon lore stuff. I'm sure there's some other creators out there who are doing it, but like, yeah, it just feels kind of unsatisfying that it's been like over a decade since they had this lore thing with Destiny, and like they haven't come up with a better way to just like make this really cool stuff easy for people to enjoy, and like get the full story without having to really search and dig for it, and yeah, put their game on hold and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think we're going to transition into talking about another time in Bungie's history and a totally different method of storytelling, and that is Halo, the first Halo game. We are talking about this because Halo Campaign Evolved recently released a couple of weeks ago for the Xbox, but also for PlayStation, PC, and stuff like that. This is an Unreal Engine remake of just the campaign of the first Halo game. So there's no multiplayer associated with that. And I have to point out that they just did remake the first campaign of the first Halo game in the Master Chief Collection not too many years back. It was not an Unreal Engine. It was basically more of like a reskin remaster. But I thought that was exceptional. I thought that was pretty much like the definitive update of the first campaign. And I was coming at this from the perspective of I don't see any need for this campaign, but if it lets more people who have like never played Halo and like who have been like maybe PlayStation loyalists or whatever and have heard about this game for decades but have like maybe only played it once at their friend's house or something like that and have never gotten the chance to play through the campaign, we can play through it with those people. There's 4-player split screen, or not split screen, 4-player online co-op, cross-platform, all that stuff. So I thought, why not? It's not going to sully any of my memories or anything like that. It's great.
The
If more
story
people
of
can get
that
involved.
first one especially, yeah, the story of that first one especially is just so fun that I think, yeah, the more you could bring that to people,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a true
give them a
classic.
shot.
It's like it draws on so many existing sci-fi tropes, and then in turn it
Right.
like perpetuates and like kind of generates its own. It really is like not to sound pretentious, but it's a fun game, but it's like an important work, and like video game
Right.
history or whatever. So again, the more people that could play it, I was excited about that. And then the first thing I want to say too is like, for me, there's like a few things that like really make that first game what it is, and one of them is like screwing around with the warthog on the silent cartographer level. And I saw some buzz online about other people like, yeah, you got to be able to like drive the warthog where you're not supposed to on the silent cartographer level. I think I'm talking about something different than these people are. Like a lot of people are talking about like exploding the warthog into like up into like the mountaintop in the center of the level.
Yeah.
No, like
Yeah.
for me, it's about like driving the warthog into the control room. It's or not the control room, but the cartographer area itself, like into those caverns. There's a little cutscene where the chief like goes to a ledge and kicks a rock. Like that's where I need the
Hmm.
warthog to be, right? Um, And you cannot do that in this game. And the biggest reason is because
Oh,
the
really?
vehicles are destructible. So a lot of times that technique involved like shooting the warthog in the back with rockets and stuff. And if you do that, you just blow up the warthog.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different like vehicle opportunities that are just totally like messed up by the vehicles being destructible. Then on the other hand, there's like other parts where like even on that level where they just like removed big obstacles to the warthog, and Cortana's just like, yeah, go for it. Like drive your warthog in there. Like there's like a part where you kind of have to like you've been like circling the island, and then you need to go up into the center, and there's usually like some rocks, and they encourage you to go on foot, and then you encounter some hunters. And like
Right.
it was not too hard to get the warthog up there in the original game, and then in this one the rocks are just gone. And if I remember correctly, Cortana's just like, you should drive up there. um so there's just some weird things like that. There's also a lot of weird like mixing of like the old voice lines with like new re-recorded voice lines, and it's like really jarring, especially with Cortana, who like delivers her lines in the way that I would expect from like Cortana in more like Halo, the later Halo games, where she gets like a lot more emotive and stuff like that. She's pretty, she's like your robot, like she's kind of
Pretty
almost like
flat.
Data from Star Trek,
Yeah.
vibes in like the first game. And so like that's very different. The monitor is different. Like they seem to have re-recorded all of his lines. You can't like shoot at him anymore. They just like don't acknowledge that you're even doing that. So there's just all these very weird little subtle small changes where I was like, like you kind of changed the character of the original game for like reasons that
Right.
I don't really see why, right? On the other hand, one of the big things I read in reviews, and especially like even just like at the lead up to the game coming out, was that the original game for Xbox had a real simplified texture and color palette that gave it like a really good tactical readability. And so you could walk into a room and understand very quickly, like, oh, that blue guy is the elite, right? Like the jackal shields are over there. And like you naturally understood where to go through that tactical readability combined with like environmental cues. There's a lot of like Forerunner arrows on the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
The new game, because it's an Unreal Engine, things are so much more detailed, right? The concern is like, hey, realistic isn't always readable, right? It's going to be harder to walk into an
Right.
encounter and understand because it's going to look more muddled, because it's going to look more realistic. Also, this game cues you with like objectives all over the place. So instead of just like find your way through the control room and pay attention to the little arrows on the floor, there's just like an objective at the end of each room. And this is like something that people were kind of like upset about and said took away from the character of the game. And to me, it's like just the opposite. Like I thought the tactical readability or whatever was awesome. I went back and like played the Master Chief Collection where you can toggle back to the original graphics, and like I just think the first game is like really muddy and hard to read in a lot of places. They like rely super heavily on fog. Like a lot of the environments are like way bigger than the Xbox can truly handle, and they're like flat
Yeah.
textures all over the place. It's like not clear what material most of the Forerunner stuff is supposed to be. And comparing it with the new game, I just thought like the new game is both beautiful and extremely like easy to read situations in. And like, yeah, there's more objectives. Like they hold your hand more with the waypoints, but like it's 2026. You know what I mean? Like when I was playing the original Halo, like it was like, how can I kill 6 hours after school? I mean, this just
Right.
isn't that anymore. And I don't want to get lost in the library and in the control room anymore. So I think the
And
option to
most
turn that
other
stuff off
people,
would be cool.
right, yeah. And I think, again, if the goal is to sort of, give a new experience to people who have played the game before, or get other people into it, like I do think there's a certain degree. I mean, I think we even see this in some of the criticisms of Marathon, is like people don't want to do that, right? People don't want to just go through like a big map. I mean, you couldn't even sprint in the original Halo, right? So like you're
Right.
going slowly through sometimes these really enormous maps. You're wandering around, you don't exactly know where to go, and like yeah, that was a really cool experience. I do have some really fun memories of like, playing with
with you and some of our other friends to like make our way through these maps. And like, yeah, there's like kind of this discovery element of like, yeah, it makes the world feel really alive. But I don't know. I don't think that most modern games are designed like that anymore. And I think it's kind of weird to expect that they would.
Yeah, exactly. And then just to kind of round out like my sort of like review like thoughts, there are some very weird like there are now like flood hunters, which
Mm-hmm.
are something that appeared in later Halo games but were like never really in the original. And like there are some things like that that I think didn't make sense. Like the flood hunters didn't really need to be included, but like okay, there's a part where like in the two betrayals level you're supposed to go around like walking into shield generators, and Cortana's like, I'm gonna overload your shield generators, and like it's gonna blow this thing up. And like in the new game instead there's just like, hey, there's three things in the room, like shoot them until they turn red, and then you did it. And that one made me like irrationally angry. I was like, are you guys like, is the point of this game to like gaslight me into thinking that the gameplay in Halo was always like this? Because you guys clearly just took like Halo Industry or whatever they're called, Halo Studios, nay 343 Studios. Like I just I always thought the gameplay in Halo was a little more like they gave you a little more interesting things to do, and gameplay has like simplified down to like go into the room and shoot the three things all the time. And it just like annoyed me that they changed this thing that I felt like the original did well, for like no real reason other than for like some kind of weird enforced consistency. But it's like, that's the original game, right? Like we don't want the like you want the weird stuff in the original game.
Well, and that's like something that I think we've talked about so much is like, what does it mean for like a game to die? What does it mean for like a game to just be like something that exists as your memory, or to be, exist in like a preserved state
Yeah.
somewhere versus like a modern, like letting a game continue or be available for modern times. And like, I think we're seeing a lot of that. So with the Unreal Engine 5, there's something that they're able to do. I don't fully understand it, but I listened to a podcast where people were talking about what they did with the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake that they did, where essentially they're able to like import a lot of the code of the game into Unreal. And so it is in some ways, rather than taking the real game and like, just trying to upscale it and, put in some better textures and some better models, it's like they can take the game and port it into Unreal, use all of these like Unreal assets, use all of these Unreal mechanics, um, and like still keep the game in a lot of ways like the exact same what people might want from a remake, in that they haven't really changed a ton of things. But even just giving it like this modern technology, or giving you like some slightly more modern things like camera moves, sprinting, hijacking vehicles, like it changes it in a way where I'm almost just like, well, what is the point of doing a remake? Like, if
Right.
you're gonna do a remake, I almost want you to either do like a complete remake from the ground up, or to take really big swings with like, change the story, like give me a different
Yeah, actually
take on
reinterpret
what
it.
this actually is. Yeah. Give me something totally brand new, or just like make the old game accessible and playable. And I think, not to be too cynical about this, but like I think there's a way that like putting the really nice Unreal graphics in on things, it's just it's a way to charge 60-70 dollars for some of these remakes, and like people will buy them. I mean, I bought Silent Hill, I bought Metal Gear Solid Delta. Like, I think it's, I ended up feeling very unsatisfied with both of those games when I played them. But like, it does look so good. I mean, I get from a sales perspective like why you would do this and why people buy it.
Yeah, I think, and I have to say, like, the Halo campaign Evolved, I mean, it looks incredible, and the places where it shines the most are inside of the Covenant cruisers, so like the Truth and Reconciliation level, and then later on the Keys level. The gameplay, what you said about like how they ported over makes perfect sense, because they even just did a patch where they were like, oh, jackals are going to be easier to stagger when you shoot them in the hands and feet, and I was like, wow, I've already played through the whole campaign, and I never once thought about, you know, like the behavior of the enemies and how they act and are interacting with my shots on them, because they nailed that so perfectly. And so the parts where like you're running through, there's even parts with the Flood, I hate to admit, with the new shotgun and like the new like you know, kind of blast effects and like dismemberment effects with the shotgun and stuff, that I was even having fun. And I kind of hate the library, you know, so there's a lot of really like exceptionally fun gameplay moments in this. One weird thing is that like the game looks so good. The original game, all the cutscenes are rendered in engine, right? So they're like a little janky, right? They're a little fun. Like that's how games were a lot of times back then.
Yeah.
This game looks so good. I don't think it would have been as fun if they did them in engine, but they didn't. They're all pre-rendered, and like I think they're I don't even know what's going on, because dude, I'm playing on a Series X, and like the frame rate is like all over the place with these cutscenes, which is like pathetic. So maybe it is like live rendered, but the stuff that's happening in these cutscenes makes no sense. Like there's just extended period, like the two betrayals where I was going around zapping those shield generator things. Like the end of it, there's this cutscene where like the chief's like taking shots, and he's getting shot by sentinels, and he's shooting back at him, and he shoots one bullet and there's an explosion, but it's all happening off camera. And so it's just a weird, like almost AI generated, like super action hero action, but you're not seeing any action. And it's like, I just got done clearing that room. Like there's nobody in that room. Like what is happening? Why did you change all of this? You know, like.
Yeah. And like, the original game was like pretty good at being like, okay, here's the sentinels that pop up. Like these are the ones that you're fighting, the ones from the cutscene, or like, you know, famously, like you could drive the Warthog into a cutscene and have it run over the Master Chief in the middle of the cutscene. You know, like there was stuff like that you could do that was like janky, but yeah, it was just showing you what was really happening in the world.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting place like to land on that. I mean, I think like the idea that I had of like, oh, now everyone can experience the original Halo, like that was never gonna happen, right? Because everyone can't go back in time and be a high school kid who's like wasting their time playing on this game that has graphics that look antiquated now, but then we're like, I mean, they weren't mind-blowing or anything at the time, but it's not like we were playing it being like, haha, this looks like crap, you know, like this looks old. Which obviously it sort of does now when you go back to the original graphics. It's a noticeable drop, you know. And we just weren't thinking about any of that at the time, and like the novelty of playing through something like that split screen on a console was huge, and you just can't recapture all of that, especially since they just like didn't put split screen in this inexplicably.
Yeah, which again, it just goes back to like, well, why are you even like doing a remake? Like if you can't do 4-person split screen, you know, or at least 2-person split screen like you could do in the co-op in, you know, the original, like what are we doing? You know, like that is part of the fun, that's part of the joy. It's really cool to have a remake, and like the story is really, really good, but so much of the experience of the story goes beyond, you know, the campaign itself, and is so much more about running up behind one of your friends and, you know, pistol whipping them to death and letting them respawn, or, you know, I'm interested too, like you can hijack vehicles, right? How do you think that changed?
Oh man,
because like sometimes, like I remember like some of those like snow missions where you're going through like big expanses, so if you don't have a vehicle and you have to fight like several tanks, like that's crazy, you know?
That's the biggest place where they took something that used to be kind of like if you know sort of thing. Like there's a bridge that you run out onto and assault on the control room, and there's 2 banshees sitting there, and the elites are standing next to them, and if you do it right and you run quickly enough, you can grab one of the banshees before the elites do, and you can skip a pretty significant portion of the level. And like you just again, it's like if you know, you know, in the original, you know, and it's tough to do, and
you figure it out,
yeah,
during trying this level a bunch of times on legendary and dying and just being like, well, screw it, I'm gonna steal this banshee.
Right. So this time you're in the, and I remember like I was stuck on this checkpoint for a little while trying to do it right. On heroic, it's pretty easy to get blown up in the banshee. But before you even walk out there, Cortana is like, "There's banshees. Grab one. You know, grab one and head, and then you can head up there quicker." And I was like, "Oh man, come on! Like this was such a good opportunity to." You know, there's plenty of level there. If you don't do the banshees, it's still perfectly fun. It's just a little bit longer and like it's a little more repetitive, you know? And I think that was such a perfect opportunity to be like, hey, your friend who like has played this for 25 years can like help you out, right? And like, I've got this tip that's going to like save us a bunch of time. And I just think like that was a really potentially fun moment that they kind of like, everything is very on the nose with that game, right? Like when they introduce Sergeant Johnson, like he gives his little like, "Listen up, Marines, like we're gonna strangle those guys with their own guts," and then he like looks straight into the camera and like grins, and it's just like, we didn't need that, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's this weird thing. I mean, again, like this isn't unique to video games. Like I feel this like when you watch like a Star Wars movie now, it's like this weird like thing where you have to like be like faithful or like winking at the original IP,
right?
But like you also have to like really like hold everybody's hands through it and be like, yeah, like you're getting what you want. Isn't this what you want?
Right.
And in doing so, like it also feels like, I don't know, it like crushes the experience, or like, you know, it feels so hollow. Like again, you know, what we're saying of like part of the fun of Halo was like figuring some of that stuff out yourself and like exploring the world. I mean, we had a friend in high school who was just like, yeah, I just wish there was like a version of Halo where you could just explore the map. And like we like roasted him mercilessly. But like, you know, that was part of the fun, was just kind of like exploring this like huge map and like kind of just like seeing the things you could do and the things you could try. And it, yeah, the idea that like it's kind of locking down those experiences and being like, this is like the right way to play Halo. Yeah, it just kind of, yeah, it's just kind of disappointing, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's just more credit to Bungie for, you know, again, I was skeptical, and maybe it hasn't worked out for them when they said, hey, we're redoing Marathon and it's this totally new genre. It's an extraction shooter. It's a completely fresh design and take on the IP. But to me, unless you're doing a totally faithful remake like the Master Chief Collection, that's the way to go. You know, reimagine it, reinvent it for us, because you can't
do something totally
recreate
new.
it. You might be able to upgrade the graphics and remaster it, but you can't recreate that experience that everyone had with the original, you know?
Right. And I think, you know, it's up to us on gamers to say, like, we had this wonderful experience and like it ended, and that's okay. You know, we have these like amazing memories, and now it's done and we're going to move on to something else. And speaking of moving on to something else and ending things, I think that'll do it for us for this episode today. So closing out, I do have a Marathon developer suggestion for this week, and it is all about Arachne contracts. So I think this is huge. You and I, as you mentioned, I got Arachne VIP. I started focusing on Arachne contracts really, really early, and I just got Arachne as my second to last VIP faction just this past week. So I was focusing on Arachne for a really long time, and it just took like a huge grind. Arachne for you is still lagging pretty far behind, right? That's the one that you're still working on the most.
Yeah, exactly. I've still got like 5 or 6 levels with them.
Yeah. Arachne contracts right now are really, really tough because most of them are like kill 5 runners or something like that. And when I get those contracts, I just re-roll them because you can't go into a mission like A, sometimes guaranteed you're even going to find runners, and B, like guaranteed that you're going to kill them. And like killing like 5 runners, like that's like a lot. That's, you're either wiping like a big part of the map if you're doing duos, or you're like doing it over, the course of like several runs. And most of the time I want a contract that I can get done in a single run.
And they'll
that's kind of
throw
my
ones at you
baseline.
that are like down 5 in a single run, and it's not worth any more XP than
Right.
downing 5 into like, not in a single run.
And so I don't engage with those at all, right? Like I re-roll them because they're just not practical. What I think Arachne contracts should do is they should award you progress whether you down another runner or you are downed by another runner. They should reward you when you die.
Dude.
I think this makes sense from like a lore perspective. Like if
Completely.
Arachne is this like cult about trying to understand death, like what better way to understand it than to experience it yourself? But it's also going to give you an incentive to say, okay, I can't guarantee that I'm gonna like kill other runners, but I can at least guarantee that I'm gonna go into this map looking
And
for
do
a
some
fight.
PvP. Yeah. Man,
And like really try to play this PvP.
you've been hinting to me as we've both been trying to creep up our Arachne rank over the past couple days that you had this overhaul idea, and you didn't really share what it was. So I'm hearing this
Right.
for the first time. And yeah, I gotta say, you didn't oversell it. This is a really, really good idea. What's his name? Whatever the guy from Arachne was just telling me that, the gift I
Charter.
could bring to other runners, Charter, was
Right.
to kill them and let them experience the cleansing, rebirth process. So it completely fits with the lore. I think it would make leveling up Arachne way less punishing. And
Dude, you
I'd
would be
I'd
VIP.
be VIP. Yeah. Oh,
The
easily
amount of
by
dying
now.
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it also does something that I think, we've talked about too, of like the contracts will differentiate your play style based on which faction you're working for. Maybe Syac is about exfilling things. Maybe, Nukel is about, using consumables. Traxxas is about just like shooting your gun, like literally like, using bullets or
Weaponry,
like dealing
yeah.
damage to anyone. Right now they're all just sort of like open containers, break windows.
It drives me crazy
do
when somebody
these
who isn't
things.
Mida gives me a break windows quest. I'm like, what is this doing for you?
Right.
Like Mida, I understand why they're like, just go destroy stuff, right? It fits in with their whole
Right.
ethos. But then, like Traxxas or whoever is like break windows, and I just don't get it. So I agree that differentiation should be much more clear, because then it should funnel you to like, right? Like, sure, you can re-roll, but it should be like, you don't want to go too far with this and force people to use like a specific gun or anything. Because like I know Destiny could run into that where it's like, oh,
Right.
the daily today means everyone is going to be like fusion rifling me in the face. But yeah, you do want it to be like, oh, okay, like I need to think more about like my implants on this run because I'm like working on Sekaguchi, and like that should be part of how you learn to become a more well-rounded player, right? By adopting those different contracts and fulfilling them.
Right. And it can guide you through different things. Like, maybe there's a way like we talk about, like, we don't do lockdown events very often. Like,
Right. Oh,
occasionally we'll try to like fight a warden. There's various things that already exist on the map that you can try to do. And like, I just think that there's probably not a difficult way for them to come up with like, one faction is for doing this kind of stuff, one faction is this kind of stuff, and really just like highlighting the various different play styles that you can have in the game and still have a really fun time. I mean, like, I think about like, how cool would it be like if you're like in HaLore and all of a sudden there's like, somebody honking the horn because they're like a bunch of Arachne psychos being like, I'm looking for a fight, like, come for me. And like, you're in a Syac, mission being like, okay, like I just need to get to an exfil, right? Like, what do these different, play styles do, and what do they do when they're all colliding together on one map? Are a bunch of people doing a Mida mission,
Right.
and so everybody's trying to like fight the commander that drops in, or are a bunch of people, do you get one lobby where everybody's PvP and it's just like bloodthirsty, right? Like, it's a way to just keep changing things up, and I think, I hope they can move more in that direction with some of these contracts.
Yeah, that's awesome. The Arachne contract idea of getting some Arachne XP for dying is really good. And not to like hijack your developer suggestion or anything, but it's just got me thinking about like, of course, there's always going to be an ongoing conversation about like, should you be able to have more than one contract at a time and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think the idea of like bonuses could be fun, right? Like, here's your contract, kill whatever, kill or be killed by a runner, but if you can get two, that's a bonus, right? It's going to be worth double the XP kind of thing. And they do the little bonuses to advance the contract more quickly. But I think the idea of, and that might even create some fun opportunities for like stacking things. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to be like, hey, I'm taking a SIAC contract, but I also have this little like Arachne bonus thing, right? Where if I kill somebody along the way, Arachne's going to toss me whatever, some kind of commendation. That could be fun.
Yeah, that would be so fun. Like, you have side deals with the other contracts or with the other factions that are giving you little like modifiers to your contract.
Yeah, they could frame it as like, side work or like sponsorships or whatever. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. So next week, we are going to be diving into, I think, an incredibly important topic, one that we've talked about a little bit throughout this season so far, but we are going to finally dedicate an episode specifically to marathon haters. There are a lot of them out there. They are some of the scum of the earth, and we are going to dive exactly into the marathon hate. What is justified, as of course, we think there's plenty of justified criticism to go about this game, and then really also dive into just some of the weirdos who are just like hating this game just like their sole identity online.
It's a way of life.
As always, there is going to be a little donation link on our video and episode title. Give us a like on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us 5 stars on Spotify, all that kind of stuff. And you can also send us an email at synthsilkfailure@gmail.com for any suggestions or feedback. In theory, you can find T-Money and Stubby Stan as panelists on Discovery Debrief, returning at some point in time for season 4 of Star Trek Strange New World. And that's it. We're going to say goodbye. Remember, runners, marathon is dying, and so are you.